All right, so hear me out on this. I don't think it's crazy, but maybe we were a little wrong and early to judge John Gruden. I think what he's doing, I think he might be an evil genius. Think about this. They already have their first round pick. They got the Khalil Mack first round pick. They trade Amari Cooper for a first round pick. Let's say now that they could throw Carr in there. Dude, it's feasible. They could end up with 4 first round picks next year. Maybe this guy is doing what I said. Maybe it's the complete blow up. That guy might be a genius. You might have underrated him.
No, this guy is so dumb. He said to the team today that he didn't say anything because he didn't think Amari Cooper's trade was official, and the guy practiced today with the Cowboys. So let's tell me how evil genius this guy is.
All right, he's either an evil genius or he's drunk. So let's just get loaded. Because welcome to the Loaded Box Podcast,
where we never finish first because we finish last.
Thank you once again for tuning in to the Loaded Box Podcast. We are your hosts, Ben Morgan and DJ Primo, and it is Week 8 in the NFL, so we are back with your preview podcast. As always, we're going to be talking daily fantasy sports, bargains, stacks, and just general advice. We're going to be doing some listener fantasy football start, sit, debate questions, and most importantly, our favorite aspect of the NFL season, we're going to be talking about our against the spread gambling picks. So, DJ, should we kick it off with a little daily fantasy sports talk right away?
Ready to roll.
Nice. Well, I do need to say that in case you didn't listen last week, you missed out on a hell of a week. Because, man, if you listen to most of the guys.
I didn't miss.
I know. I looked through them again when I was updating the agenda. Your picks were spot on. My stack was legit. A couple other ones that we had just randomly talked about were legit. I was able to withdraw some funds out of FanDuel this last week. It felt good.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah,
I know, and I didn't. Of course, I didn't put any money down, my dumb ass. I was all about losing money this weekend. So
nice. Well, hey, let's win it back for you here this week. What's your daily fantasy strategy for the week, and lead it into with your quarterback that you're taking?
All right, so I didn't go squarely. Like, these are semi-bargains, not real big bargains. I've got one pretty good one, but they're kind of middle guys you can fill into those spots when you have real cheap. When you throw a cheap guy in there and then a real expensive guy in there, these are guys kind of fill in those holes like some soup. When you're full, just fill in those cracks. These are the guys that are filling those cracks. I'm starting off with a quarterback. I'm going against everybody's intuition on this one, and I'm saying everybody's wrong here. I'm going Matthew Stafford, $7,300 versus Seattle. Now, let me tell you why. Everyone is saying sit because Seattle's pass defense has actually been playing well. Well, let me tell you who three of their last four opponents were. They were the Raiders,
boo,
who quit,
yep.
who literally quit years ago. Cardinals,
boo.
And the Cowboys, who were the lowest scoring offense in the league at that point.
Without Amari Cooper, who practiced.
Exactly. And the fourth one of those teams was the Rams, who put up 33 points against them.
Yep.
So, and the other two teams they played, Denver, who put up like almost 30, I think, against them. Not a good offense. So, how good are they really? They had a couple of good matchups. They had Earl Thomas in a couple of those games. This defense is not good. I actually believe in Detroit, Stafford returns to Stafford. I know their run defense is weak. They're going to push Kerryon Johnson, but I think that's going to open it up more for Stafford. More open guys than he's ever seen before. Galladay, Tate, fucking Jones. They're going to be going off today. I mean, this weekend.
The Dolphin assassin tight end that came out of left field last week. Yes. Nope, I agree with everything you said there, and I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about Detroit later in this podcast, so I don't want to blow anything right there. I'll go on to my stack of the week, because last week I was all over the Baker Mayfield, Jarvis Landry. Both guys ended up over 20. I'm not going with those same guys again this week, but I'm predicting both of these guys to be around that same mark this week. I'm going with Case Keenum and Emmanuel Sanders. It's a little bit of a bargain stack. Sanders is a little bit more expensive. He's $7,200. Case Keenum is $7,000. But hey, it's the Broncos' turn to play Kansas City, and you know that's going to be a high-scoring game. Chiefs ranked dead last in fantasy points allowed to opposing teams' quarterbacks. Keenum in that blowout win last week against Arizona, nationally televised game, he only had 10 FanDuel points.
He sucks.
Well, he didn't need to do anything. The defense scored twice in the first quarter. Emmanuel Sanders was tossing touchdowns. Keenum in the 2 games prior to that had over 20 in both of those games. Emmanuel Sanders. This is a guy in the offseason I would not stop talking about when we were talking about fantasy receivers. I was all about him. I was to Emmanuel Sanders as you were to Robert Woods. Those were 2 guys that we just keyed in on the offseason, and they've panned out greatly. Emmanuel's been over 100 yards and a touchdown each of the last 2 games. 31 targets over the last 3 weeks. He's averaging for the season nearly 17 FanDuel points per game, and he's easily Case Keenum's go-to guy. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be back and forth. I do sort of like Phillip Lindsay. If you were to not go with this stack and want to use a running back in this game, I sort of like Phillip Lindsay. But I think this game turns into more of a shootout, and in that situation, you're going to want the quarterback. So I think even though Keenum's not a good NFL quarterback, he can be a good FanDuel quarterback this week, and he's finding Sanders. Sanders is a top 10 fantasy receiver. I like them both, 7,000 and 7,200. I think this is my stack here.
I don't picture myself ever using Case Keenum in a FanDuel fantasy lineup in my entire life.
Well,
ever.
I wouldn't ever imagine.
I can't shit on a guy so much and then use him.
True. It'd be like me using Blake Bortles. But I could use Mitch Trubisky, who I'm not a huge fan of as an NFL quarterback so far. I see the pieces there. But man, just he's getting it done right now in fantasy. So yeah, he's probably not a bad bargain play. But I see where you're coming from. I want to talk to you real quick. I want you to give me a yay or nay on these next 4 guys. Okay, what do you want to call it then?
Let's say yes or no, bitch.
Okay, give me a yes, bitch, or a no, bitch on these next 4 guys based on how expensive they are, because these are the expensive guys, so would you use them at their price point? Number 1, Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
Say no more. In case you don't know, he's 8,600 on FanDuel. All right, number 2, Jared Goff, 8,500, playing the Packers.
Yes, bitch.
Oh, that's like better.
That. I mean, it's gonna be a shootout. So both quarterbacks in that game, 100%.
Yep. All right. How about this one? Andrew Luck, 8,300 at Oakland.
Yes, bitch.
Nice. Wow. So you like all the expensive guys.
Yeah.
All right. How about the most expensive guys? Do you think you would get enough bang for your buck if you went with Pat Mahomes at 9,200 versus Denver?
No, bitch. Because that's a lot of money for a guy who I think they should have lost to Denver in the first game of the year. They've got Von Miller. They got some decent cornerbacks that could actually get them in trouble. I know it looks like it's in Kansas City, but 9,200 for Mahomes, I think, is a little too rich for my blood. A little
steep for a quarterback.
Yeah, and I think Kareem Hunt's starting to get it going as well.
Moving forward, I think we need to start playing yes, bitch, no, bitch a little more often. That's a lot better than yay or nay.
Yes, bitch. Yes. Yes, bitch.
Nice. All right, enough of quarterback. Hop over to your running back. Who you got this week?
All right. Again, it's not like a terribly cheap bargain pick. It's not a terribly expensive one. But I'm feeling me some DJ myself. David Johnson versus San Francisco. 7,300. Look, this is just based off the fact that they fired their offensive coordinator. So you have to think that Byron Leftwich's main focus is to give the ball to David Johnson any possible way he can.
Right.
So I think just off a pure, what's the word I'm looking for? When you get a lot of carries, get a lot of touches.
Volume.
But off a pure volume, turn up that volume.
Yeah, bitch.
Turn up my snare. I think David Johnson is somebody needs to be plugged into your lineups because I don't think Byron Leftwich wants to be fired either. So it's just going to be David Johnson. Yeah,
he probably doesn't want to get fired. I thought it was funny how it sort of got revisited that Steve Wilkes is the coach of that team because I almost forgot after we talked about it, and it instantly gave me that Jerry Springer feeling again. Steve Wilkos.
Yeah, I still don't know that fucking guy.
Someone just tweeted a tweet that I actually retweeted about David Johnson about how it might be a good time to buy low on him because he actually has the easiest remaining strength of schedule against opposing running backs. So
and he's still in the top 10, isn't he?
Well, I think he's got enough 1-yard touchdowns to kind of keep him relevant. He's not been
perfect.
He hasn't had that awesome week yet that everyone's kind of waiting for. But hey, that's the advice right now is buy low on David Johnson. So we'll see. I think this week will be really telling. My bargain play running back is actually from the from the same game, but opposite team. It's Raheem Mostert. He's only $5,600, a little bit more of a bargain than DJ, but like you said, you weren't going bargain there. You're just going for the play. His first 2 touches, Mostert only had 8. His first 2 games only had 8 total touches. The last 2, 23 total touches. His volume has, like, you talked about volume. His has been going through the roof, while Matt Breida and Alfred Morris have gradually just been coming down. He had 9 points 2 weeks ago, 10 points last week. All he's missing right now is the touchdown. I think that comes this week. I think he's going to get about 15 to 20 fantasy points in this game. Cardinals are the 32nd ranked run defense. If you're not aware, there's only 32 teams in the NFL, so that's dead last. I don't think he's going to get every single carry. There's still going to be room for Breida if he plays. There's still room for Morris out there. But I think that we're getting the most competent guy here, and we're thinking that they're going to start leaning on him a little bit more. So he's only $5,600. You're taking a bit of a chance, but I think you get some expensive guys if you plug Mostert into your lineup.
Yeah, Breida is coming down because of injuries for the most
Right.
part. He's just been struggling with those all year. And Alfred Morris is just, he's not coming down.
He's Alfred Morris.
Yeah, I mean, he's Alfred Morris. You're not going to give him too many carries, so.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
There it is. Before we go to wide receiver, one last running back thing. It happened. Todd Gurley hit the next level. He is $11,000 this week against the Packers.
They are really cranking that shit up to another level.
They are trying to make you not be able to do it. So check this out. I want to ask you, is he worth it again, or will he finally settle down? Listen to this. Only 19 touches last week. This is the first time in the last 3 games he didn't have over 30 points. He had 28.5.
Oh,
He's
Jesus.
had over 20 fantasy points every single game. He's averaging 28, and he's going against the Packers, who you know aren't all that well against the run. I think they're 20 or 22nd against the run. So
They're not all that well against anything.
facts. Are you plugging Gurley at 11K, or are you gonna go the other way?
This is a fucking hell. I mean, he could score, he could catch the ball 40 times against this team. I don't know he's going to be an issue out of the backfield catching the ball. I know they're not great against the run, but I think their biggest strength is their defensive front. If they get him out on the edge and throwing him the ball,
Yeah.
or mash up on our linebackers, not Blake Martinez, they're fucked.
Real quick tease. Is the Packers game part of your against the spread picks?
No.
Okay, so I think I saw the line last today at Rams -10. You got to pick a side. What side are you going?
I almost did do the Packers just to be like Aaron Rodgers does not fucking lose by
Double
10
digits.
points coming off a bye when he's being doubted. I feel like they could actually go in and surprise the entire world, but I'm not going to take my chances here.
No, I didn't.
I'm
think
going to
you would.
sit and just let it happen to me one way or the other. I'm not going to make a face. My entire goal during this game is not make an expression. Just lay there.
Interesting
dying.
goal. Very interesting goal. I'm not sure that I understand it, but I'm going to go with it.
I just don't want to get partial. I don't want to get too hyped up
No,
one
can't.
way or too angry the other, thinking that we could just die. Oh, speaking of Sunday, great idea that I had that I pitched to Ben here. My wife got a Fitbit for my
Yes.
mother that she doesn't use. So my goal this week is to see, and it's going to be really good because actually Saturday I'm doing a little sports day. I'm going to be hammered drunk on Saturday.
So you will not
So-
move Sunday.
I'm going to see how little of steps I take on Sunday. I'm not kidding. I'm going to wear it the entire day. But up to the point that we get here and look to see what the steps are, I want to see if I get to 100.
I'm so happy because we've talked about this in the past. We've always been like, man, I don't take any steps on a Sunday. I'm football. I've always guessed. I'm like, you know what? Just going to the bathroom, just like doing the odds and ends. I'm like, I'm probably around 100, 150. I'm curious to know exactly what you end up getting at. Plus, you mix in the likely hangover that you're going to be suffering.
Yeah.
I am pumped to see what this number produces. And maybe not this week, but next week, I'm going to steal my wife's Fitbit, and I think I'm going to try it as well because I'm excited to do this.
Mine might have a malfunction since it's called a Fitbit, and I'm going to be essentially dead.
It's just going to – they yell at you if you're not moving. Like, you are going to
I'm going to
constantly
be
– it'll be like, hey, dude. It like automatically calls 911.
I was
It's
going to
like,
say, it's probably going to call the fucking ambulance. Like, this guy's dead. You're going to have to check on him.
I am pumped. Stay tuned for the Sunday episode. We're going to be talking about that. It'll be great. Let's talk about your wide receiver. Who you liking this week?
All right. So we just talked about the Packer game, so let's flow right into it.
Flowing.
I'm going with Randall Cobb, $6,100 at the Los Angeles Rams.
He's
been injured. He's been out. What?
He's going to play?
Oh, shit, yeah, boy. He's been out 3 weeks. It's pretty much a lock to play. He was almost about to play the week before the bye week, but they didn't want to push it. I think he's a guarantee. Everybody practiced today. Everybody practiced. So that pretty much tells you he's going to play.
Yeah.
Everybody on the Packers practiced. That's amazing, number one.
It is amazing.
So they had everybody out there. This is a gut, but Rodgers has one of his favorite guys back in a game that he will be throwing a shit ton.
Oh, yeah.
A ton. They don't have a choice. They want to run the ball. That's what they're saying. Great. I agree with that. You're going to have to run the ball. Not this game.
Yeah.
You're going to have to run it a couple of times. I think going forward, yes, against the Patriots, against the Vikings, whatever, you need to run the ball with Aaron Jones, get him more involved. That's what I'm yelling about. This game, I would like them to have to run the ball, but I just don't think there's going to be a choice. And if he has to get the ball out, and he has to get the ball out quick, he's going to Randall Cobb. That's his quick guy.
Yeah.
If he has to scramble, the guy he trusts the most in scrambling situations, who's always on the same page, Randall Cobb. Plus, the secondary for the Rams is stinky. It's stinky.
Yeah, that over-under is at 56 right now.
Yeah, there's not a wide receiver. You play Javonte, you play Geronimo, you play Cobb. All three of those guys this week.
Oh, yeah, and you probably play all your Rams too, right? We're talking points. We're talking huge points.
Yeah. We're talking baseball. I don't know if Cooper Kupp's going to play, but it sounds more positive.
Took me a second to pick up that we're talking baseball reference, but I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't mind that. I don't mind it. I think that you're going to mind my bargain receiver because I think this is probably my riskiest bargain receiver I've played out this year. He goes by the name of Jordy Nelson.
Oh, Christ. Get the fuck out of here with that shit.
He's only $5,300 at the Colts. That entire Raiders team, 2 weeks ago, they had a bye week. 2 weeks ago when they last played, they were terrible. Nelson only had 2 catches. It was just a pitiful game, just all in all. The 3 games before that, Jordy Nelson scored touchdowns in all of them. Fantasy-wise, put up 26, 15, and 12. That's 3 straight double digits. Now he's literally going to be the man there. Cooper's out of the picture. You got the Colts who are 21st against the fantasy football wide receivers. And you've got the Raiders who are most likely going to be playing from behind in this game. And I don't think you should be fooled by that Colts defense either. Last week they only gave up 5 points. Remember, that was against the Bills. The 3 games before that, against the Jets, gave up 42. Against the Patriots, gave up 38. Against the Texans, gave up 37. They are not a defense that's going to allow just 5 points every freaking week. I think Nelson's going to see his first game with double-digit targets. I think he's going to flirt with 100 yards and probably a touchdown again. And that at $5,300, DJ, I know that you think he's beyond his prime, but like you said, volume. The volume is going to be there. Jordy's going to be there for you. Put him in your lineup. Lock it in.
Don't ignore it. Please ignore everything he just said. Ignore it. Don't do this, okay? He can't. You said he had 3 touchdowns, right?
3 in a row.
All 3 of them were games where they forgot he even was on the field. One time they actually forgot he was on the field. One of the touchdowns was a 1-yard touchdown where the team forgot he was on the football field.
That's the beauty of it. FanDuel
don't care.
This is not
an exaggeration. They left him out there because they just didn't realize he was there. So that's like the biggest fluke of all time. You're taking away Amari Cooper, who's getting that number 1 attention. You think he can't get open against your second or third cornerback?
That's my one nervous part.
Against your top cornerback.
That'd be my one nervous thing. But I still think if the volume is there, he'll still find a way. He's still an NFL receiver. Like, he's not what he was.
Yeah, because he's playing in the NFL.
Yeah, bingo.
Yeah, he's an NFL wide receiver. He's just not a good one. Add to the fact that I don't see this team scoring many points the rest of the year. This team has quit. All right? Everybody's old. Everybody's getting traded. Derek Carr doesn't want to be there anymore. He cried last week, and everybody's making fun of him. Like, the word is that, like, his other brother, the other one that starts with a D, I don't even know his name, came to his defense and he said he didn't cry one tear. He clearly cried. He was crying, allegedly. He was crying. He looked like a little crying baby back bitch. And apparently the teammates are just not a fan of him for this crying situation.
I'm so happy that there's so much dysfunction around this team because it makes me feel like I've dealt with dysfunction my entire life being a Dolphins fan. And I'm like, all right, other teams are feeling this way.
Erectile dysfunction.
That's coming in a couple of years. I'm just guessing. Oh, by the way, that's probably one of my favorite things because the game started like 12:05 now. Especially for me, I've been streaming all year, so they start at 12:05 because they lag.
They start at 12.
Every week, though, before the game, it is that Snoop Dogg commercial where he says, lots of guys suffer from erectile dysfunction. Not me. Probably you, though.
I don't see that shit. I don't see it.
It is the best commercial. God, I got to get a snap video of it, send it to you.
I got Red Zone usually pumped up at that point.
Oh, so you probably miss it.
I like to watch the timer click down.
Nice. Before we move on to our flex and our tight end, I want to play another game, a new game I've incorporated for this week.
I like this. You don't even realize what you're doing. So we got Halloween coming. You say you want to play a game, and they say that's the movie Saw.
I should have put the little hat on.
Yeah, you should have.
All right. This game is called Guess Who I Am. I'm going to give you a couple hints here, and you'll see if you can guess this wide receiver that I want to talk about real quick.
Okay.
All right. I've only had double-digit fantasy points twice, despite. Let me start over. I can't read well. I've only had 2 double-digit fantasy point games this season, despite 4 straight games against teams with 24th or worse ranked pass defenses. I scored less than 1 FanDuel point last week as the team's number 1 wide receiver, despite my team scoring 31 points. I have less than 85 receiving yards in every game this year and just 2 total touchdowns. And the last clue, my young quarterback has been a fantasy stud recently, but forgot to bring me with. Who am I?
It's Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson.
That literally, I was like losing it, and then I heard young QB stud. I've had Allen Robinson on my fantasy teams. It sounds like him.
Yeah, he's $6,300, I believe, this week. And like you said, Trubisky he's been really good in fantasy recently, and he's been bringing all these guys along. Trey Burton's been going off. Gabriel, not last week, but Taylor Gabriel, a couple games before that, has been doing well. Cohen's been doing well. Howard finally found the end zone. Where's Allen Robinson in all this? Do you think you can? He's only $6,300. He's the team's number 1 wide receiver. They're scoring points. And I don't think you can justify using him right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been playing him in fantasy leagues. I don't know. I was frustrated last week because it seemed like he should have played better, but he was still hampered by that injury, so he didn't play at the end of the game because it looked like his injury cost him at the second half of that game.
Yeah, but I just think he's a sit in FanDuel, like in redraft. Yeah, monitor his situation, see how he's doing with the injury report and everything. Go from there. But yeah, in FanDuel, he looks like a bargain, but I'm here to say avoid him. Like, avoid that bargain this week. Let's go into your flex play of the week.
All right, my flex play is probably my biggest bargain. He's not my biggest bargain. My biggest bargain is Randall Cobb. He's another middle-of-the-road guy, not too crazy, but in the 6,000s. We're going Marlon Mack, return of the Mack at Oakland, $6,700. Look, this team stinks against the run. They've already given up. Breakout last week. Great matchup versus a team who's given up. Give me all of that. That's literally all I need to say. It's going to be another breakout week for him. And they don't want Andrew Luck throwing 50 times a game.
Exactly.
Now Marlon Mack's back. He's going to get the ball.
Yep. That's exactly how I see this game going. And games don't always go exactly how you predict. But if I was putting my money on this, I would say Andrew Luck probably throws 2 to 3 first half touchdowns. And boom, it's Mack the rest of the way. Like, they are going to get out to that lead. They're going to they're going to be comfortable enough. They're going to be running the ball. And when the Colts actually need to run the ball, it's been Mack. Like, Hines has been more of a receiving option out of the backfield. When they actually need to get down to running the ball, it's been Marlon Mack. And yeah, Mack can get it done through the air as well. So not opposed to that. If he has one more good game, it'd be obviously 3 pretty legit games in a row. He's not going to be even close to like bargain price anymore. He's going to continue to work his way up in FanDuel price. That's your flex. I'll talk about tight ends. That's kind of how we've been doing this. I want to give you the weekly. What?
I was just gagging at tight ends.
Oh, I got what you're doing there. I want to
Yeah.
give you my weekly update on just how sad this position is. On the main slate of FanDuel games, Michael the Dolphin Assassin Roberts is the second most expensive option at the position. He has a total of 26 fantasy points this season. That's how terrible this position is right now. You, like DJ said, just stream it out. Stream it out. So my choices have been, ever since we've been doing this, it's basically been Trey Burton. He doesn't continue to like jump up too much in pricing, and his production's been there. He's only 6,400 this week against the Jets. He's been my guy the last 2 weeks. I sort of feel like maybe he's due for a little bit of a regression. So I'm, in case you don't want to play that card this week, my other suggestion would be OJ Howard. He's only 5,800. He's playing the Bengals. He's been in double digits 3 of the 6 games he's played in. He was targeted 9 times last week, and he's averaging around 9 FanDuel fantasy points per game. If you can get around 10 out of a tight end at $5,800, you are doing fine at the position. You just got to find a guy that's going to score. I think Howard and Burton would be my 2 plays this week.
Trubisky loves his tight ends, though. Like, he loves them. He loves that guy. He throws anytime he can. He's getting him the ball over that middle of the field. And that's maybe another reason why Allen Robinson, maybe he's not as good outside the numbers, Trubisky. Maybe he doesn't feel as comfortable. Maybe he's not as confident because he's playing, Gabriel and Anthony Miller in the tight end over the middle. He likes throwing it to that part of the field. Maybe he doesn't feel as confident throwing it down outside those numbers to a guy like Allen Robinson.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that could be it. So, yeah.
Maybe it's just a personal preference.
I'm all about Burton. I'm going to be throwing him into like 3 redraft leagues this week, so I'm all in that way. Daily fantasy, I'm between him and Howard, depending on that price difference. DJ, before we talk a little against the spread picks, I know that you're in a little bit of mourning on that. Do you want to get your feelings up? Do you want to try reading out loud and tell the fans about a little pristine auction?
You want me to read this shit?
Did you see me try to read just a little while ago? It did not go well.
All right. Here we go. Pristine Auction has daily auctions packed with tons of stuff for the man cave. Like this shit behind me, all that Aaron Rodgers, all that beautiful Packer stuff. They guarantee their items as they all come with certificates of authenticity from only the trusted sources. It's affordable, but most people think they can't afford it, but it's much more affordable than you think. It's quick, it's free to register, free to bid, you only pay when you win, and make sure you mention the Loaded Box podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section when you register. Head over to pristineauction.com. That's pristine, Pristine, auction.com.
And that, folks, is how you somewhat read out loud a little bit better than what I can do. So a
little bit of struggle, but I hide it well. I got that enthusiasm.
Yeah, you just got to take a little bit of pauses. That's all you got to do. All right, yeah. I'm excited for this next portion because we've had a little bit of a turn in fortune here. Because if you look at last week, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but you lost 12 units. That's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good. I, on the other hand, I was conservative. I won 2 units. I went 2-1. My year-to-date record is approaching back closer to 500. I'm only 4 units down on the season. You, after being up, I think you were up like 30-some units at one point. You're only up 3 units at this point. You're 12-9 on the year. How did you feel going into this week? Are you what's the word? Are you chasing? Are you still chasing this week? Are you going to be throwing a bunch of big bets out there? Or are you confident? Are you regathered yourself to give the people what you were able to provide like the first 5 weeks of the season?
Look, this was a good week to lose, right? And listen, why? I said to people after this, I was like, Vegas must have lost a ton of money because I felt like I bet the side that Vegas wanted to. Turns out Vegas had its biggest losing weekend in the NFL this weekend. So I think I was on the right track. I think I felt good. And you know what they say? You know what the Philadelphia 76ers thing is? It's trust the process, all right? I got you guys up, $300,000. Now we're down to only $30,000. But guess what? We're still winning. Trust the process. We're going to get back there. I hear you guys whispering, oh, DJ's cold. Oh, we shouldn't listen to him anymore. You're still up on the year. You're still winning. Trust the process. We only lost because Vegas side we want to be on. That's the side we're going to be on. Check it. You think I'm scared? I hear you whispering, DJ. DJ's not going to bet all his units. You fucking wrong. I'm not going to bet all my units. I'm hammering 12 again this week. Let's go.
I love it. You know what upsets me the most is I agree with you. Like when you know that you're on the right side of something and it still doesn't work out, it's like you got this moral victory. But those moral victories don't turn into any of the paper, DJ.
Yeah, I lost a lot of money this weekend. I literally went 0-8 on Sunday.
Hey, let's dive right back into it. Hop on that horse. Let's hear who you're going with. First pick.
All right, number one game, I started at 5 units. I actually moved it down to 4 because there's another game I liked, another game that I like more. So 4 units. I've got the Bears, -7 versus the New York Jets. Here's why, and this is just quick reasoning. You gotta love teams that I feel is a pretty good team. Coming off of 2 disappointing losses in the last 2 weeks, they're desperate. A desperate team with still a pretty good defense. Whoops. I'm not even drinking beer.
Yeah.
Not even drinking beer. A desperate team with a good defense going up against a rookie quarterback with Matt coming after him and that defense. I think that spells trouble. I like desperate teams that I still feel is pretty good. Not great. They're not going to make the playoffs, but they're a pretty good team. And they're playing against that rookie quarterback who I think is going to see a lot of different looks from a very talented defense that he hasn't seen, and I think that equals trouble for Sam Darnold.
Yeah, so you had kind of given the Vikings a little bit of trash.
We'll get to them.
Well, you gave them a little bit of crap last week for letting the Jets kind of hang around a little bit. With the number being this big, it sucks. You can't really let a team hang around. You a little bit nervous, or do you think the Vikings defense is like finally going to come back and like that desperate team situation?
I felt uncomfortable last week with my bets, and I want to feel uncomfortable. If I'm not uncomfortable, I'm uncomfortable. If that makes sense, okay?
Should end the podcast on that.
I'm not uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable because then I don't feel like I'm making the right picks. Like, I can't get too comfortable with my picks. You have to feel not good about your picks because that's the side that Vegas is going to be on. I didn't feel good. Vegas lost a shit ton of money. So did I. I'm going to go back to that strategy because usually Vegas, the bookmakers, the odds makers, they win. -7 with the Bears losing their last 2 games, the Jets playing good in their last few games, seems like a really big spread for a game like this. That's why I'm hammering the Bears in this one.
Dude, I'm just saying that was so deep. I think I'm finally starting to process what you did. So wow, that was deep. That was impressive. That's what that was.
Yeah.
So my first one, I wasn't teetering with 5 units or 4 units. I've actually got 2 units on my first one here. I'm going to come back to earth a little bit here. I've got the Cleveland Browns +8 at the Steelers. So you had talked about Big Ben joking around about James Conner playing in his last game. Turns out that might not pan out. Le'Veon still hasn't reported. And
I hate this guy.
Do you know that the Steelers are only 26 in rushing yards per game? I mean, Conner's been getting it done like through the air and on the ground a little bit. But as a team, they're not really getting it done yet. So you look at the Cleveland Browns defense. They've been up and down the entire season. Look at the good. They gave up 18 to the Saints, a really good offense. They gave up 21 in the first meeting to the Steelers.
Overtime.
Yep.
Overtime.
And they only gave up 9 to the Ravens. More overtime? Just overtime's everywhere for that team.
Overtime.
But look at the bad for this team because only one of these games went in overtime. Actually, I think 2 of them did. Shit. They gave up 38 to the Chargers. They gave up 45 to the Raiders. And then last week, not terrible giving up 26, but it's still not something. You don't want to average giving up 26 points per game. Now they get Big Ben at Big Ben's house. It's already the second time they've played each other, though. That first game was a 21-21 tie. These teams obviously know each other being in the same division. You got the Browns. They've lost 2 in a row, but they are just like the Giants, in my opinion. A lot of NFL analysts, a lot of people that play fantasy and look into NFL like us were like, oh, the Browns and Giants are going to be so improved. If you would have taken the time to look through the schedule, like what we did in our preseason predictions podcast, the Giants and the Browns schedules were so hard, and you would have realized that 7 to 8 wins out of one of these teams would have been a pretty good season. So I'm not at all concerned about what their current record is at this point. I'm not sure that they can hang the entire game playing at home against Roethlisberger. But staying within 8 seems fairly likely to me. Cleveland, I talked about it. They're only 2-4-1 on the season. They're 5-2 against the spread. Pittsburgh is just 3-3 against the spread. Going against Ben at home seems a little bit backwards, but I think they can hang within 8. I'm going to put 2 units on the road, Doug.
Listen to this. The Browns have played in more overtime games, 4, than non-overtime games, 3.
Stat of the day.
That's wild. That's just wild.
So you want to hear another wild stat? This was prior to last week, but I think it still matters because I don't think Peterman took a snap last week for the Bills. But in order, because he's throwing up an interception like at a crazy rate, like however many passing attempts. In order for Tom Brady to meet that stat of percentage of throws that go for interceptions, he would need to throw an interception on his next 1,000 straight pass attempts. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's good. He's a good quarterback. That little dick man.
Little dick man.
Little dick boy.
All right, let's hear about your second play of the week.
All right, this one's 3 units. My smallest play of the week. This is the same situation as the Bears situation here. I've got the Bengals -4.5 at home versus Tampa Bay. Again, another desperate team, solid team, coming off of 2 losses, playing at home. I like desperate teams. They had a bad week. Dalton had his bad week. You're not going to have it every week on prime time. They just don't play good in prime time, right?
They are terrible.
That's like the Bengals thing.
Yep.
Tampa Bay, real bad defense, no run game. Has to throw, of course. There's going to be a lot of scoring in this game. There's over-unders probably 58 to 60 in that area. -4.5 for a desperate team with A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd to actually have a good run game and mix in versus a defense that can't stop anything and an offense that has no run games. Give me the Bengals in this one.
Yeah, it's at 54.5, so it's not quite as high as what you anticipated, but 54.5 in a pro game is still quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm picking a side in this one, I'm probably with you because, believe it or not, at this point in their careers, I have a little bit more faith in Dalton than I do in Winston. I got to watch a little bit of that Buccaneers-Browns game at the end, and some of the decisions that Winston makes just kind of shocks me a little bit. So I'm not quite sure that he's the answer. At the same token, I don't think Dalton's the answer. I think the Bengals should do what the Raiders are doing. Just blow it up. Just start all over. Start with the coach. That guy should have been gone for years.
Like 4-2? It's not like the Bengals are bad, are they?
But they're going to do exactly. They're going to make the playoffs and they're going to lose in the first round. That's what they do.
They're 4-3.
There you go. So are the Dolphins. But
yeah, okay.
Well, the Dolphins are going to be 4-4 by the time people listen to this podcast. So
4-5 by the time they play the Packers.
Eat it. All right, I'm gonna do a big no play on that one, but I see where you're coming from. My second one here is the Detroit Lions. They're favored by 3 against the Seahawks. So you talked about Stafford, and this is where I'm going to talk a little bit about the Lions and Stafford. I have a lot of the same information that you did. This is my biggest play of the week. I'm going 4 units on this one.
Oh shit! Watch out.
If you know me, that's big. That's a drop in the bucket for DJ, but that's a big play for me. We saw the Lions get it going on the ground versus the Dolphins. 250 rushing yards, 7 yards per carry. Now that Seattle defense, they ranked 22nd, I believe, in rushing defense for fantasy purposes. We saw how that run game helped Stafford. 4 incompletions last week. Seattle's 3-3, but and you mentioned it. The defense has looked a little bit better. They've looked a little bit better, and they're coming off of a bye. But like you said, look at those games they played. They pounded the Raiders overseas. They stayed within 2 of the Rams. Back-to-back wins against the Cardinals and Dallas. I put the Lions in a whole different class than the Raiders, the Cardinals, and the Cowboys. Lions are only 3-3 straight up this year, but they're 5-1 against the line. They're also better at home than they are on the road. That's kind of similar to how the Seattle plays as well. And this is a home game for the Lions. They're 2-1 at home. Seattle is just 1-2 in true road games. And that one road win was against the Cardinals. So really, how much stock are we putting into that? I can see Seattle staying into this game for a little while, but I think the Lions just have too many playmakers to be contained this entire game. 4 units on Kerryon Johnson and that run game. It's going to make Stafford better. It's going to make your Stafford play look good in daily fantasy. They get it done. 4 units. Put it on the board.
I don't know what the over/under in this game is, but I think I'd rather play that in this situation just because I think it's inside, fast track,
And take the over?
both defenses that aren't the greatest in my opinion. I know Seattle's, again, I talked about Seattle defense. I think it's completely overrated by that number. I think that's a little overblown by the quarterbacks they've played. I probably would favor the over more than anything because I think it's going to be back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and I don't know who's going to end up winning that game.
All right, I can respect that. Let's hear your third game.
All right, this is my 5-unit game, baby, and I love this one. I love this one. I'm slamming this one. New Orleans Saints at the Vikings.
Wow.
You're giving me a pick 'em here? Come on. Here's a couple of things. Like I said, the Vikings have been playing pretty shitty teams.
Yeah, they
kind
have.
of letting them hang around, then kind of pulling away at the end. But don't forget, they lost to the Buffalo Bills.
We talked about it. That game doesn't count anymore.
Your argument is like, oh, they had Josh Allen in that game. Then you're fucking... I don't even want to say the bad word. You just get out of my life. Just stop listening. Just get rid of the podcast. If your defense is no Josh Allen, because he's garbage too. They lost to the Bills. They're just getting hammered by everybody. But the other thing I really like about this game is it's the revenge game for the Saints.
Oh,
right?
Big time.
Revenge game for the Saints. They are coming out with their newly ramped offense and defense now that they've gotten Ingram. It's crazy how Ingram can come back and impact both their offense and their defense by just his presence, by keeping their defense off the field a little more, keeping them fresh, slowing that game down, and just making that Saints a better team than what they are when they're in shootouts. Revenge game for the Saints, easy win here in the pick'em.
And then they just added to their all Ohio State defensive backfield. They just traded for Eli Apple. Apple
they got in there, yeah.
And he sort of struggled as a rookie right away in his career, but that's going to happen when you're a rookie. We saw he was probably their best corner this year. He was starting to turn around, and the locker room was like, you remember, I think it was Landon Collins or someone called him a locker room cancer a year or two ago. And then now it's like everything's been fine. They were kind of blindsided by this deal, which it kind of blindsides me as well. Like if you're getting the Giants and you're in tank mode and you're building for the future, why are you getting rid of a very young corner that's showing improvement? That's hard to come by. Getting good cornerbacks is hard to do. So I'm not quite sure what their theory was on that. But back to your game. This game, in my opinion, is one that I just want. After a long, hard Sunday of not doing anything because the Dolphins don't play, I want to sit down on that couch over there, and I just want to enjoy this great game. I think it's going to be an awesome game, but I have zero idea who comes out on top because, like you said,
told you.
I hope it's well done. I just hope it's back and forth. I hope it's fantasy points galore. Throw in all of your studs in this game. Thielen's going for 200 plus and 2 touchdowns. It's going to happen.
This is his first game under 100 for 7. He doesn't get the record. Hey, and I can't. The one thing that I hate about the Saints, they need to quit this. What's his name?
Taysom Hill.
This Taysom Hill thing. Like, this needs to be done. When are they going to end this Taysom Hill experiment?
Never.
It's going to fuck them.
No.
Eventually, they're just going to bring everybody because he hasn't shown that he's going to throw the ball. Nor do I have any worries about him throwing the ball. I know the Packers had him for a little.
They're saving him. They're just saving him at this point.
No, this is just a gimmick. Like, why are you taking the ball to Breeze's hands? I think it's the dumbest thing ever. I don't like it.
I like it.
It needs to stop because it's going to end up screwing them over in the long run.
By the time he just keeps on faking that he's going to throw it, and by the time he does, it's going to work in the playoffs. It's going to be beautiful. So
they need to stop this Taysom Hill experiment. This is the worst. I can't watch it anymore.
Keep it going, Sean Payton. I love it.
Quit it.
All right, here's my last one. I've got the Carolina Panthers for the second straight week. They're getting 2.5 at home against the Ravens.
That was garbage.
Who is? Oh, that game that you lost and then I won.
Week, that never should have happened.
I loved it.
That's
I loved
it. Backdoor of my life.
Love the back door. Hey, this is another game that I think the line is a little bit backwards. With the home team getting 3 points, Vegas is telling us in this game that Baltimore is about a field goal, if not a little bit better than Carolina. And while I don't think that's crazy talk, I still think that the Panthers are a better team this year. We just talked about it. Panthers coming off. They were down 17 in the fourth quarter to the Eagles. They come back, and then you got the Ravens lose the heartbreaker to the Saints. Justin Tucker, who hasn't missed a field goal or an extra point since his high school days, misses the extra point to force overtime. So they've got that whole revenge factor going on. I get that the Ravens have a good defense. They allowed 24 to the Saints last week, which is saying something. The Saints obviously have a great offense. But they've allowed 14 or less in the 4 games before that, including shutting out the Titans. But when you look at the Panthers and you look at Cam Newton, in my opinion, we talk about certain fantasy players being matchup proof. In actual NFL, I sort of feel like the Panthers are a little bit matchup proof because if the team is taking away the passing game, Cam Newton has that speed and that athleticism to get it done on the ground. Like, you can't take away everything in that. And if you take away the running game, well, look at Christian McCaffrey. What's his best asset and his best strength? It's making plays out of the backfield as a wide receiver. So I feel like just like your standard defense against an offense, yeah, sure, the defense is going to be good. But in this situation, I feel like the Panthers are a little bit matchup proof. I don't see a ton of points being scored in this one. I think it could be a fairly ugly game. In that situation, I just like the home team, who I think is a little bit better and who's getting points. It's a small play for me, but I'm going to go 2 units on the Panthers.
Yeah, one of the few that I actually like you taking. I might bet this game now that I see it. It's obviously not on my sheet here, but I'll probably end up betting that. Hopefully not on tilt. Hopefully just because I'm winning and I want to keep adding to my win streak.
Right.
Yeah, I like the home dog. I think Baltimore stinks. I always think Baltimore stinks. That's because Baltimore does stink. So, yeah, I'll get on the Carolina bandwagon. I think Christian McCaffrey is the guy that ultimately puts the Panthers over the top in this game.
Yeah. But at the same token, I wouldn't be surprised. I talked about it on last preview podcast. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose this. That's like what the Panthers will do. That's why it's only a 2-unit play. They will hang with the best. They will beat the Eagles for some reason. And then they'll turn around and lose to a team like the Ravens. So that's why I'm keeping it a little bit lower. But I think if they're going to try to compete in that division with the Falcons and obviously with the Saints, they're going to obviously have to start getting wins around here. And this is one you need to win. So any other against the spread advice, or should we plunge forward?
Next.
All right, we got some listener questions. We've got your boy, Mitchell Trubisky versus the Jets, or Kirk Cousins versus the Saints.
I mean, with the way the the way the Bears offense has been playing and what they've been doing, I'm going to go with the Trubisky. I think there's going to be too much slowness. I don't think it's going to be back and forth in that Saints-Vikings game. I think it's going to be a little slower. It's going to be a slower game. The under's going to hit here. The over-under is going to be too high. It's going to be slower than people expect because neither one of their secondaries has been playing great. But I think you see turnovers from Cousins. I think you see a lot of run game from the Saints. I like Trubisky against the Jets 100% of the time with the heater he's on.
My favorite thing about what you said is that you're calling him Trubisky. Like, you just popped out of that out of nowhere. I've never heard you say that before. And I'm upset that it's taken this long for you to give him that nickname.
He's the truth.
I like it. I'm going to go opposite, though, because of everything you said. I believe the opposite. I think Trubisky is going to be false bisky. That was a terrible joke, but I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, that sucked.
I think he's due for a little bit of a regression here, whereas I see Cousins, like, that game is going to be so amped. And I'm like you. I think it is going to be a lot of back and forth. And we know that Dalvin Cook's not playing again. Latavius Murray's done fine recently, but I don't see him taking a bunch of numbers away from the passing game. I just think Cousins is too good to pass up in this situation. You're going to get more, like, if he has a bad game, you're going to get more out of Trubisky than if Trubisky has a bad game. So I'm going to go with Cousins in this one. I know that we're going to disagree, but this is what I've got.
It's like kissing cousins.
Just like kissing Kirk Cousins. One more here. So you have to pick one in a flex. Traquan Smith playing the Vikings, Raheem Mostert playing against the Cardinals, or Taylor Gabriel playing against the Jets in the flex position?
Well, here's what it comes down to. It's process of elimination here. You've got Taylor Gabriel, who's just not a trustworthy guy, in my opinion. You don't know what you're going to get there. So I'm staying away from that. Traquan Smith in a game that I think there's going to be kind of slow, favoring, kind of like last week's with the Saints, where it's just kind of favoring my boy Mike Thomas. So with Breida hopefully out, they've got a little bit of a gem and Raheem Mostert. I'm going to go there.
Yeah, I'm with you. Obviously, I talked about him. He's one of my DFS picks, so I'm taking him there. One more pick here as well. You got Jared Cook versus the Colts, or our boy Azuma, the tight end for.
Why is that our boy now?
He's my boy.
Oh, okay. I don't make him my boy.
All right, my boy Azuma, the Bengals tight end, taking over for Tyler Eifert, basically now.
There's not a tight end in this league that's my boy.
That is the truth. That is the truth. He's going against Tampa. Do you even have an opinion on this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Cook because, no Cooper. I guess I don't know. I don't like tight ends.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one though as well. I mean, we talked about Cooper being gone now and Nelson being targeted, but man, Jared Cook was one of the best tight ends in the league, and I'm not sure if that's saying much right now at this point, but he was crushing it earlier in the year, and I think with one less mouth to feed there, he could be back to being a legit tight end play. So keep him on your radar. I don't think anyone would have dropped him, but in daily fantasy, and if you have him and you weren't using him recently, I think you can go back to using him with some confidence. But yeah, use this week maybe as that barometer and see what they do with them.
Samesies.
Well, on our week 7, what's it called? Instant Reactions podcast, we talked a little bit about a segment that we wanted to do with these ones as listeners could type in.
Oh shit!
Could do their overrated, underrateds, and I provided an underrated this week, and we have a person that sent a message with an overrated. So the overrated for the week is political ads, because they say no matter what channel you turn on, there's always some political bullshit with a ballless, spineless, overpaid representative that allegedly represents us. November cannot get here fast enough. I gotta say.
That got a little bit too political for this podcast. Did you get a bomb sent to you today by chance? Because I did.
I didn't get a bomb. It was you, Obama, and Bill Clinton got the bombs.
And CNN.
CNN got one too?
Oh yeah, and a few other people, all people that Trump villainized. It was pretty crazy.
Nice. I have to say though that I agree with this overrated.
Lots of bombs being passed out.
And you know that like how anti politics I am, because I have never even registered to vote, and it has become one of my lifelong goals to never ever have been registered to vote. That's how anti politics I am. So this overrated, I'm all in on.
Yeah, I'm overrated on even talking about politics.
There you go. So my underrated for the week is having a shower drain that works. Because since I moved into this apartment, if you're watching on YouTube, even like the day that we moved in, when you take a shower, by the time you're done, you have standing water that's up above your ankles. And
I hate that.
And that's not just us. So if you're watching on YouTube right now, you can see this thing that I've got right here. It's called the drain snake. So
you're gonna be puking when you pull that hair out of there. I've done this a million times.
I watched a YouTube video because I've never done this before.
You watched a YouTube video to put a snake in the drain?
I haven't done it yet. I watched a YouTube video to see how.
You just put it in there, twist it up, and pull it out.
All right, but I didn't realize how gross it was going to be. So I have a game plan. So on Friday, right after work, I'm coming home. I'm going to start pounding some Busch Lights because not only when I get home, I have to start carving a pumpkin. So the entire time that I'm carving this pumpkin, I'm going to be pounding Busch Lights. And then when I'm good and liquored up, I'm going to get my drain snake out, and I'm going to pull some random-ass person's hair out of this drain, and it's going to be terrible.
I've done that multiple times at this house with my wife's hair, and I ended up with hair and gunk and shit all over my hands and arms. I've got to the point that I'm just like, fuck it, I'm going barehanded. I'm not even using gloves. Going barehanded, getting shit all over my hands because I'm a fucking man. Just get in there, man up, pull that shit out.
No.
It's going to be fine. You can always wash your hands afterwards. It's gross, but live. It's man shit. Okay,
but that's your wife's hair. This was happening
No. There was lots of weird shit in there, bro.
All right, well, regardless, I'm getting good and liquored up before I try that. So that's my underrated.
And then you're carving a pumpkin. I'm actually carving a pumpkin on Friday too.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, you're whipped too.
But I have a 3-year-old child.
Yeah, so do I. He's in my bulls.
Yeah.
Do you have any overrated, underrateds for the week, or should we wrap her up?
No, I didn't even know this was happening.
Well, once again, thanks again for tuning into the Loaded Box Podcast. Find us on Twitter at Loaded Box. Check out our website, loadedboxpodcast.com. We'll be back Sunday evening or Monday morning if you want to watch the Sunday night game because it's going to be epic. Check us out Monday morning when you get to work. Our Week 8 Instant Reactions podcast will be sitting there waiting for you. So with that, DJ, why don't you go ahead and send us out?
Fucking hell! Oh, that sucked. Bye.
You tried.
The hell.